not entirely sure I need this. I'm not sure. I came to this convention because the organizers reached out to me and asked me to, and it's been a while. It's been tremendously exciting being here and meeting a whole bunch of new people. I love Star Wars fans, and I hope this is going to be a lot of fun.
Yes, thank you so much for being here. We all appreciate it, I'm sure.
My pleasure. Literally.
So I have a few questions ready for you here. First one, can you tell us about how you became involved with writing Star Wars Legends novels?
Well, I'll see if I can give you the short version. I was offered a slot in the New Jedi Order, which was the big project from Del Rey when we took over the franchise, novel rights from Bantam. And I wasn't going to do it. I didn't do tie-in fiction these days. I published 3 novels of my own to excellent reviews, but not a great deal of sales. And they offered me Star Wars, and I thought, yeah, what am I gonna, do I have to have the Solo twins kidnapped again? Seriously, I mean, literally, and Shelley Shapiro said, oh, no, it's not gonna be anything like that. It's gonna be a completely new story based on the old continuity. We're trying to avoid retreading any of the sort of classic plot lines. And I said, all right, I'll think about it. And while I was thinking about it, I ended up at Gen Con, which in those days I think was still in Lake Geneva. And I was there with Bob Salvatore, who wrote Vector Prime, and Mike Stackpole, who wrote Onslaught, the first 2 books of the NJO, which mine was 13. And these are both guys that I had known for a little bit and admired. I like their work, and I like them as people. And we got to talking about it. One of them had heard a rumor that I had been offered a slot in the NJO, because they were both already on board. And I said, yeah, I'm just not sure I'm going to do it, because it's not my story. And it was Mike, I think, who said, listen, I don't know what the first print run of your last book was, but the first print run of your next book could be 250,000 copies. And I said, oh, I get it. And that's it. That's how I got started. And it was because of Trader that they offered me Shatterpoint, because they wanted to do a dark horrors of war kind of story for the Clone Wars, and because they thought I understood the dark side, and that's how I got Revenge of the Sith. I mean, the two previous authors in the prequel trilogy, much more famous than I am to this day. Terry Brooks, for Christ's sake, and R.A. Salvatore, right? And then there's me. But they thought that I had, because of Shatterpoint, they thought I had the right touch for that kind of epic tragedy. And apparently, since you're all here, it worked out okay.
Actually, so that segues into my next question. Shatterpoint is one of my favorite Legends novels. And because it features one of my favorite Star Wars characters, and because of how unique it is compared to the other Star Wars Legends novels. So can you tell us a little bit about your motivation and inspiration for writing Shatterpoint?
Well, it was desperation. I got a big contract for Shatterpoint, and it was going to be the first hardcover publication of my career. It was not only my first Star Wars hardcover, it was my first hardcover. I was a paperback guy. And so I had this, I came up with this whole complicated fighting smuggler plot in like Nar Shaddaa, in the depths of Nar Shaddaa, and the Hutt gambling syndicate, and stuff based largely on John Osterman's work for Dark Horse. He did some Mace Windu comics and stuff like that. So I had Mace, I had Dashing Pilot, I had Fussy Drone, I mean, I had the whole 9 yards and the whole plot line, and I sent it in, and I got a call back from Shelley and said, no, this is not what we want from you. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, well, we're looking for something for the Clone Wars that's going to have more of the vibe of Cold Mountain, All Quiet on the Western Front. And I said, have you read Cold Mountain and All Quiet on the Western Front? Both of those books share a specific common trope, which is that the main character is killed at the end. Sorry for the spoilers. And Mace Windu, yeah. I'm like, how do you expect me to pull that off? And they said, I don't know, come up with something. And a couple of days later, in desperation, I got this idea. I called up Shelley and said, what if I were to do Apocalypse Now with Jedi in it? And she said, oh, that sounds good. And she ran it up LFL, and they're like, yeah, do that. I didn't even submit an outline.
Oh.
That was my outline. Apocalypse Now with Jedi. And the only real, and I think I fulfilled that largely, except that me being me, it was not so much Apocalypse Now as actually what Apocalypse Now was based on, which is Heart of Darkness, because Joseph Conrad is one of my heroes. So, so it is not really Apocalypse Now with Jedi. It's really action adventure Heart of Darkness with Jedi. But other than that, it was really, there wasn't that much known about Mace in those days. So I was strip mining everything I could find, not just the screenplays and the other stuff, but the Dark Horse comics and anything that would give me like a starting point. And it was there was a line in Emissaries to Malastare where Mace is talking about the Grassler herds on his home planet, and because they're fighting mutated act dogs in an arena, it's a comic book thing, and so using the Grassler herds and act dogs, both from already canonically from Mace Windu's home planet, I sort of built the rest of the Cornite culture, just kind of off that. And I think that, that was, I mean, that's pretty much it. And the rest was just really an attempt to keep things moving, but have each action sequence be a little bit more dramatic than the one before it, right? So it works in beats that go up to this, the giant climactic battle that covers about the last 2.5 chapters. And so I was going for that kind of vibe, but other than that, it was really, if you take out the battles, yeah, it's hard to do this. So that's my Shatterpoint story. Did I come in close? Okay, sorry, get started.
So again, basing it off of Heart of Darkness, what makes you think that Mace and his Padawan Diva the best two characters of the Jedi Order to tell that story? Like anything about their personalities or their relationship that was.
That's interesting. I am, again, there was very little known about Mace, but there was even less known about Deborah. She was a character from the comics as well, and I think described only in her 1 or 2 appearances as a Chalactin adept. She had a couple of gems set in her forehead or something. Honestly, it's been 25 years since I wrote that book, so. So a lot of their relationship was based on, just like Samuel Jackson's vibe as an actor, and this lightsaber style that he supposedly created this, I guess they now call it Juyo, but in those days, they called it Papa. This is again something I got from Oster, I think. Now, I'm a nearly lifelong student of the martial arts. Whenever I have been healthy enough to train, I'm training. I've done literally a dozen different martial arts. And the whole concept of lightsaber styles, let me tell you, it's garbage. That's not how fighting actually works. But it's canonical, right? So he was supposed to be master of the super deadly style. And so I got to basically decide how that style worked in in detail. And since Depa was, again, canonically the only other Jedi to have mastered the style, then you start to, based on the kind of, it's the love of combat, it's the love of victory that drives that style. It's very aggressive, multiple attacks, overwhelming defense, right? And so it's just their whole relationship kind of came out of this sort of weird father-daughter, teacher-student kind of thing, because they're both separated from all of their blood relatives. They're Jedi, right? They don't have families. The Jedi are their family, and so it just kind of grew out of the details that were necessary to keep it consistent with the established story.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite part from, or a favorite scene or quote from Shatterpoint?
Probably my favorite scene from Shatterpoint is actually it's like chapter 2. It's the interrogation between Boris Gepton and Mace, where if you haven't read the book, he's a planetary administrator, sympathetic to the techno union, whatever, because they pay more, and he's just a character that I really enjoyed writing, and the Mace's gradual realization of just how dangerous this insignificant-looking guy really is happens through the course of that scene, and then it's confirmed in the action sequence that follows. I when I have reread that, I get a little smile out of it. I like that stuff.
Which of your Star Wars novels did you enjoy writing the most?
Trigger. Without a doubt. Because for one thing, I knew exactly what the story was going to be. Because I pitched it under pressure. I think Mike is off doing his writing workshop. Mike Statler was a writer who preceded me in the order of the New Jedi Order. And when I was originally hired to do that book, I was told that they wanted me to take this Jim Lucino character for Jer and make her like the Yoda of the New Jedi Order. And what they wanted her to do is teach Jason how to withdraw from the Force so that he would be completely undetectable, even by other Force sensors, right? So he could sneak in and do secret agent stuff. And in Onslaught, Mike just, the second book of the NJO, Triggers 13, he just casually references that ability as just something that all of the current crop of Jedi already know how to do. When I went to the story conference, I mentioned that to the editors, and they looked at each other and they're like, "Oh, right, that was what we wanted you to do." We didn't even notice. And that's what I left that first evening at the story conference in a panic. But the next morning I just got this idea of having Vergere not be never really knowing what her game really is. right? Because Jason doesn't know. So I decided I wasn't gonna let the readers know either. And the whole, the way I pitched that story was, what if Jason is already a captain, is being tortured, and she comes in as his rescuer, but what she says to him is not, you know, I'm Luke Skywalker, I'm going to rescue you. What she says to him is, everything I tell you is a lie. Every question I ask is a trick. You will find no truth in me. And so Jason, that let me have Jason's focus be on what is she trying to do to me, right? Not just surviving it, but trying to understand why she's doing it. And I also knew that I was going to get to have a Force-using character say, there's no such thing as the dark side. I knew I was going to get to do that. And I knew I was going to get to do the only dark side you need to worry about, Jason Solo, is the one inside you. And I knew it was going to be a shitstorm. and I was so excited. One of my best friends at the time was an even bigger Star Wars geek than me. And when I got back from the story conference, I went over to his house. It was like 10 o'clock at night. And I was like, John. I'm going to fuck with these people like they've never been And because of that, because it was the original title of that book was Underworld, which they nixed because I think it was a Quinlan Voss arc in the Dark Horse comics when it was going by that name. They preempted my name, but the whole Underworld, the story was plotted as a kind of classical Greek mythology journey through the underworld, right? Stations of the underworld returning to the whole Joseph Campbell thing. So I had the whole thing, and it's a bottle story, right? It's only about the characters in there. The wider war that was going on around them, not an issue. So I didn't have to coordinate with anybody. I told them what the beginning was going to be, what the end was going to be, and I just did it. And I did the whole thing, and it was actually the last book of my career that I turned in by the deadline. It was really fun. I've never had that much fun with a book. No. So there you go.
So I assume the answer to my question is going to be that. But if, aside from Revenge of the Sith, are there any of your books that you'd like to have adapted into a live action?
Oh no.
Or not?
Shadowplay. If they were going to adapt into a live action or even an animated version, I think Carl would rule in an animated version.
Yeah.
But Trigger, I don't think works without the context of the New Jedi. I mean, I know there are some people I know who have just read that because they were fans of mine, not NJO fans, and they still liked it, but I feel like without that context, it's not that really that powerful a story. You know, if you didn't know Anakin and watch what happened to him in Star by Star, if you didn't know that, you don't know where Jason is at the beginning of this book. Because I don't do backstory. You know, if I can avoid it, I hate exposition. I hate it. I try never to tell people anything more than what they need to know to understand what's going on right now. And so, Trigger, favorite Star Wars book, fun to write, but I don't think it would work that well in an adaptation. Yeah. And also, there's a lot more ass kicking in Shadow.
It's graphic. It's very graphic, but that's one of my favorite parts about it is how really graphic it is.
That's literally what they asked me for.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, they were gonna take out the fever wasp scene.
Oh my God.
And I was like, are you kidding? Come on. And they said, okay, well, why don't you just end it before he destroys the brain with his lightsaber? And I'm like, okay. So in that scene, he tells him what he's going to do, and then it's just, and Mace, turns and went to work or something. It's still the job. But that was the only thing that they thought was over the top. That was the only sequence that I had to sort of struggle to keep.
Interesting. Are there any parts of your novelization of Revenge of the Sith that you would have liked to have included in the movie?
Oh, a lot. Well, and a lot of them are based on stuff that Mr. Lucas shot but didn't actually put in the film. There are sequences in the book that they're in the book because these were scenes in the shooting script, which is what I was working from. And some of those I kind of like. A lot of the political stuff doesn't really show up in the movie, but it was all there in the screenplay. Actually, it's maybe heresy, but when I read that shooting script the first time, I called up Shelley Shapiro. She was, the Star Wars editor in New York, and I said, if what I'm seeing on the page here, if this is what this movie is going to be, this is going to be the greatest freaking Star Wars film ever. This is gonna blow away Empire Strikes Back. The script. It's for sale. You can read it. I like it. I liked it better than the final version because there was more in it. And but maybe the. I don't know. I can't really think of. Maybe the sequence between Obi-Wan and Padme in the book, where Obi-Wan is letting Padme know that he knows that they're in love and secretly married, but he can't say it out loud because he's a Jedi and the rest. And when she realizes what is going on. It's right before she leaves to try to go to Mustafar, just that scene, there's just in the book, it's just a little scene where he's looking for Anakin. Anakin's in trouble. He doesn't know exactly what's going on, and she's as he's leaving, she's like, you love him too, and Obi-Wan just turns and says, please do what you can for him, and walks out. And I would have liked to have seen something like that. I would have liked to have seen that relationship between Obi-Wan and Padme. But it's already 2.5 hours. And also, scenes like that, you can get away with it. Because a book doesn't have to keep your eyes locked on it for the entire runtime. You know what I mean? The quiet scenes, a lot of the quiet scenes in my stuff, the ones I like the best, in my version, because you just couldn't put those on screen. Right? You could, but it would be a very different movie. Not necessarily better. Yeah, just my opinion.
I would have liked to see the exchange between Dooku and Palpatine before Obi-Wan came in.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
I'm very fond of my particular version of Dooku. I had a lot of fun writing the stuff from his point of view. I'm going to be on a panel later on this time with Sean Stewart, who is largely responsible for my take on Dooku. He wrote a novel, Clone Wars novel called Yoda Dark Rendezvous that involves, if I recall correctly, it involves a young Dooku, like 12-year-old Dooku in training at the Jedi Academy. And Stewart's evocation of this young developing entitled sociopath was so evocative for me. I'm like, okay, that's it. that's how I'm going. I'm going to take that and I'm going to run with that for his whole sequence in the story. Which, you know, in the screenplay, he has a bigger part in the original shooting script. There's more above him. Again, artistic choice on Mr. Lucas's part to make that, you know, the first 10 or 15 minutes. In the screenplay, it's the first third. It's 30% of the actual page count. But, you know, his movie, he knew what he wanted out of it. Wasn't the same thing I wanted out of it, but that's inevitable with me.
Yeah, it's interesting that he, you know, after reading that part about Doogie, he's it gives me a very different perception of his personality, who he was. And it's funny you use that word sociopath, because when I was reading it, I thought the same thing. I was like, oh my God, he's a sociopath.
Oh, yeah. well, yeah, I mean, and again, I think this is something I borrowed from Sean, the bit about him categorizing other people. They're not people to him. They are assets or threats or irrelevant. There's no other category.
Yeah, that was fascinating.
Yeah, I may have stolen that from him.
Looking back now, are there any parts of any of your novels that you would have liked to have written differently? Whether it's a character, their personality, a different sequence, anything you would have changed at all?
In Star Wars. Well, I will say that the answer is generally no. Even though I would do it differently if I were doing it now. What I was doing then was literally the absolute best I could do then. And I'm willing to let it stand on its I'm sort of the opposite of Mr. Lucas in that way. He loves to tinker with stuff he's already done. Me, I'd rather do something new and just let whatever I think are the flaws stand, because the stuff that I don't like about my books, stuff that I have not liked about my books, is often something that somebody comes up to me in a comment or writes me a letter or something. They go, this right here, that just really spoke to me. Jesus. But the thing is that you never know. I'm sorry, are we running out of time? Oh, thank you. I don't have glasses.
Okay, let's see here. Who's your favorite Star Wars character and why?
Oh, Obi-Wan. I mean, you can't read Revenge of the Sith without realizing that it is largely a valorization of that character in many ways. I mean, he is literally described by the author as the ultimate Jedi in that narrative. I just dig it. I love Alec Guinness's Obi-Wan, but I think McGregor's is tremendous. I think he did a great job. And the thing about Obi-Wan that is not really true of like Yoda is that Obi-Wan fundamentally is a deeply kind person. He's deeply kind. And that is kind of, that's like Luke's superpower, right? I mean, Luke's superpower is that he cares about everybody and he wants to save them. Obi-Wan is he's so decent. He's always trying. He's always trying to be a little bit better because he doesn't think that he's that good. He's trying to live up to an idea of who he thinks he should be. And in the process, he mostly loses sight of how amazing he already is. But I have a tendency to wax poetic in my prose from time to time, which I sort of let run free in Revenge of the Sith, because I was trying to evoke that sort of classic epic tragedy. I was an actor. I studied Greek theater in college, and that's what I liked. That's what I was going for, was this sort of elevated, operatic kind of style. And my favorite instance of my going over the top is the sequence there on the battle bridge of the Invisible Hand. it's just it is one of those sequences in there that this is Obi-Wan Kenobi right now. There's one there where it's just describing him giving himself to the Force, and that's how they win. Right? He opens himself up, becomes a window into the Force, sort of thing. And and it is from, I guess, a literary criticism standpoint, it's completely purple over the freaking top. It works for me. It works for me when I read it. When I reread it, I read that and I'm like, oh man. Absolutely. We got what, 10 minutes left? Yeah. Oh geez. Let's start in front. I talked to you earlier, so how about you?
You write a lot of characters who have to do with their inner darkness.
Right.
So I was wondering, have you ever thought about writing a story about Mara Jade, who is kind of like a character who went from being an assassin to a jail at night?
I'm sorry, give me the name again?
Mara Jade.
Mara Jade.
Right. No. Although I did do an homage to Mara in Luke Skywalker Shadows.
Yeah, it doesn't like red.
Yeah, it doesn't he doesn't like bossy redheads. That was literally a direct Mara reference. No, I was never that interested in that part of the storyline. And that's literally the only reason. If you're interested in assassins who try to be better, you might look at my non-Star Wars stuff, because that's what the main character is. So there you go. Yes.
I have a feeling that you're not gonna like directly answer this just out of, because that's the way the authors are. But I think a lot about, like, I love the relationship elements of Star Wars. And so one of my favorite moments in Traitor is when Jason is at their old apartment and he's walking through the dining room and stuff.
Oh, I like that too.
Do you have strong feelings or like an answer to whether that was Anakin or not? The vision of him or not?
Do I have strong feelings? Yes. Am I going to tell you what they are?
No.
But I will explain to you the reason for this. This is actually a conscious policy that I inculcated, because I used to spend a lot of time on theforce.net, especially during the MJO, just talking with the fans and stuff, just kind of seeing what they thought. And a lot of people would ask me about Traitor, because it was very controversial in fandom. And they would ask me things, and I said, and I would say, they would ask me, does this mean this? And I'm like, I am not going to tell you what I meant by that, because it's not my story. It's actually your story, right? The only story that you encounter is the one that happens inside your head when you read these little black marks on the page, right? My opinion about what something means in here does not count for more than yours. It doesn't. I literally believe this. This is an article of faith with me, that what a story means, anything in a story, is what it means to you personally when you're reading, right? So I figure if I tell people what I thought I was trying to say, they might mistake that for the truth, right? But it's not. It is what I was trying to say, but because of my privileged position with my name on the cover, I think that people would give my opinion on this entirely too much weight. Because literally, I don't know better than you, right? So that's it.
Can I ask, what was your inspiration for Jair, or like, how'd you come up with such a character like that?
Well, I didn't.
Yeah, well,
And
like
Jim
your
had
version
seen
of
it.
her, yeah.
And she was always, there was always an ambiguity about her.
Uh-huh.
Well, good guy or bad guy. But the whole ambiguity in Traitor, that was the desperation move, because that was actually the way that hit on me, that struck me as what would make it the most interesting book to write. That's all it was. So, yes,
To expand on that, when you took Trader, at the time, did they have the next, basically the last set of books where Jason turns to the dark side and you have all this stuff going on and he ends up dying? So, or am I getting,
that was a retcon.
Yes, that's right.
That is a later interpolation.
Right.
That happened after I.
well, that's what I'm saying, that was
in
the next
period.
series. I, like I said, my
That
brain.
was the next series, yeah.
So with you doing Trader, they took some of what you probably put in. Did they ask you about any of that as they put it in?
No.
Okay.
It's not my stuff. The stuff that I do for Star Wars is owned by Star Wars. You know, it was owned by
So they're-
licensing, and now it's owned by Disney.
So they're gonna do whatever they feel.
They can do whatever they feel like. This is actually, there are a couple of characters, 3 characters from Shatterpoint who appear in Luke Skywalker and the Shadows of Mordor,
Yeah.
literally just so they wouldn't kill them off during the Clone Wars. Literally, that's why I put them in, because one of them got badly injured, and I was like,
Yeah.
I don't want to lose these guys.
Yeah.
Yes.
Henry, I have a question. Did you what exactly was kind of the inspiration for Anakin's falls on the dark side and the sort of Death Star dragon that is sort of his fear basically, sort of psychologically coming from?
This is a little bit of a story. When I originally wrote that book, the dragon was not a metaphor for fear, it was a metaphor for anger. It was Anakin's rage, and it was burning through the nuclear vault that enclosed his heart. You know, again, over the top imagery. Lucas didn't like it. He didn't like it. He didn't like it because he thought it suggested the image of the dragon in there. He thought it suggested that the dark side was something. It was an external force that was working with Anakin to corrupt him, and he wanted it to stay. He wanted the force that corrupts Anakin to be Anakin, right? It is. If you'll forgive me patting myself on the back, it's almost like the line out of Trader, where Vergera tells Jason, the only dark side you have to worry about is the one in your own heart. Right? He said, you gotta cut that whole motif, and it's a motif, there's 5 sequences throughout the book, and it develops and it changes, and it was a major part of my whole, this whole artistic inspiration, ambition I had for this story. And they told me I had to take it out. And there was I've told this story elsewhere. There was a large screaming match between me and several lawyers and editors. But the upshot of it was that the next morning I woke up with a tremendous hangover and and this idea about Starscream. And so instead of the dragon being the symbol of Anakin's rage, it is the symbol of his dread, right? Because that's what it is. That in Star Wars, almost. I don't think it's ever stated specifically, but you can see it everywhere. It's fear. It's always fear is what drives the dark side, because the dark side is about control, and it's fear. People who are not fearful don't need control. Right? So that was a fortunate editorial choice on his part, because I really like that as it stands now better than I did in the first place. Are we done? 5 minutes. Yes.
So in terms of authors going back and revisiting their works, a year later, and how you feel about it and things, have you listened to Jonathan Davis's performance of Revenge of the Sith?
Yes. It's brilliant. That is the greatest audiobook I have ever heard.
Absolutely.
His performances are spot on, but also just they have sound effects. They have music. They got the score from the friggin' movie under the underlying words. It's very thrilling. I still have 5 or 6 of them. I've given most of them away.
Very, very glad to hear you say that, because
Love
I
it.
recommend that multiple times a week to people. I mean, the book in general, but the audiobook, I said,
The audiobook is so
here, the
good,
audiobook
and it's
is here.
unabridged.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's amazing.
Yes, in back.
This is for my son.
Oh,
Okay.
my question was, and it's something you only kind of touched on recently. Luke Skywalker in the Shadows of Endor.
Uh-huh.
What was it like doing that whole book with like the whole deeper darkness and the weird dualities and whatnot? And this is kind of a secondary question. Would you add more Lando?
I love Lando. Well, see, one of the things I like best about that book is I set it up specifically so to give sort of myself the psychological freedom to kind of go kind of nuts to the wind, sort of Brian Daly kind of thing. You know,
Right.
flying volcano and, you know, destroying whole solar systems but one of the upshots of that is that I got to write these iconic characters. I mean, starting with Wes and Hobby, right? Jansen.
Yeah, Wes Jansen.
I get to write all of these guys that have been written by people that I really admire, and I got to have some fun with them because doing it in that kind of metafictional way let me take all the dark stuff and go, yeah, it's just part of the story, right? Now, it's worth saying that when I wrote that book, I was actually struggling with an extremely dark period in my life, and I was suffering. I was feeling exactly what I described Luke is feeling. And the solution that I had for Luke was the one I decided on for myself. That's the way I got through it. So yeah, so in that sense, yeah, there's some autobiography in there, but the rest of it was just, you know, I just wanted people to not put it down.
We couldn't. No, it was beautiful that Luke kind of found a light in all that darkness, in all that empty shadow, and then
When you
he kind
can't
of
find
was
the light, if you can't find the light, you can be the light.
Exactly.
Now, fortunately, in my case, I found it, but it took a long time. Last question, or maybe last two? Yeah.
So I know you talked about wanting to write kind of a like retirement big send off for Han, Luke, and Leia.
Yeah, that was yours.
Yeah. Did you have anything like more specific planned about that?
No, absolutely. The only reason I wanted to do that was because I thought it would be cool to be the author of Luke Skywalker's last adventure.
Oh, sure.
That would be something that I would be still smiling about on my deathbed. And that was, I mean, that was the whole thing. It was just, I just thought it would be cool.
Oh, sure.
Save the galaxy one last time, check out. Han and Leia walk, live happily ever after. Yeah, it didn't work out that way.
It will in our hearts.
Oh, thanks. Thank you all for being here as well, Legends Consortium 2023, and one more round of applause.